Hello, and welcome to In the Light, Growing Your Soul with me, Anna Isabel. And I am very happy to welcome my guest today, who is Mark Beale. And he has written a wonderful book called Past Life Awakening, in which he showcases 7 regression cases. Hello, Mark.
Hi, Anna. Isabel, nice to meet you.
Oh, it's good to meet you too. I also do past life regressions and I'm an analytical hypnotherapist. So I am especially interested in your wonderful book. Um, what led you into this field of inquiry, if I can put it like that?
Yeah, it's an interesting process of being led over the course of many years in this life, and then discovering that you've been led here by actions in many past lives as well. So, so my very first exposure came in when I was 25 years old, and I had an economics degree. I was working in a corporate environment, thinking, and within the first days of having that job, thinking, "What am I doing here? This is not for me." Therefore, one must go look for something else. So I was traveling, do a lot of traveling, and was in India for some time and went to a meditation retreat. And there, while meditating, I had a spontaneous, I was supposed to be in a meditative state, but I think I went into a hypnotic state where I regressed to remembering being a 10-year-old reading a book on hypnosis. And not only did I remember that I read that book, but I'd actually practiced it and put my sister and mother into a hypnotic state when I was 10. So that was my first act of being a hypnotist. And then I went on to remember things not just from early in this life, but from early in past lives as well. And it was about a 7 or 8 year process of going from a 25-year-old, having his world turned upside down, to finally qualifying as a hypnotherapist and being full time since the age of 32. So I had a sort of a career shift, although I never really fully committed to the first career. And I've been doing that for 20 years. So I'm 52 now. And I not only I do past life regression, but I also mentor and train people in it. And so I find most people don't kind of come out of school and become, I'll be a past life regression therapist now that I'm 22. It's not how it works. 32 is pretty early, and a lot, and that's I have some students in that in the 30s, but it's mainly in the 40s, 50s that people start thinking, okay, I've lived a certain life, but now I'm reviewing it and looking at life again and going into a new career. So I did that kind of quite early, but still, it was a transition. So I lived a couple of lives in this life.
What do you feel is the most important, I guess, benefit to doing this work? So when people come to you, what do you feel is the benefit of working in this way?
Yeah, and the first thing, people come to you and they've got a presenting issue, which often isn't the real issue. So we as therapists, understand that. And so what people start talking about, this is what I need to work on. And then they'll start to realize, well, hypnotherapy isn't just, breaking habits or something simplistic. They realize how sophisticated it can be. And because you're going to the root cause of the issues, not just trying to amend the behaviors at the other end of it. And when you start going into the root causes of one issue, you might dig deep enough, you start going to the root causes of all issues. And that can be things like ultimately fear and greed if you stay in banking forever. But most people that I work with, they don't come for that. Few of me of my greed. But but even just a sense of over consumption or overcompensation for am I good enough or not? And then having to prove that we are by doing all sorts of ridiculous things in the world. Whereas often we don't need to do that because we're creating a sense, we're developing a self that is fictitious in a way. So the ultimate benefit is that we get to a transcendent realization of who we are, which leads us away from any kind of fear into a peace. And it's hard to put a price on that, but it's pretty valuable.
It is. It's to be at peace with oneself, I think, it's the ultimate. feeling of healing, which is what I aim to help my clients to do also, is to find that inner peace, um, which is so important. And it's easy to see how that might work for people when they're dealing with um, big or small traumas of this lifetime. So, for people who are new to the idea of past lives and past life regression, what is it that you feel past life regression adds to this?
Yeah, well, it's another layer. It's not necessary for everybody. So if people are completely new to past lives and have never heard of it, I'm not necessarily recommending it. Like if it's completely out of your wheelhouse. So for me, when people approach me and say, I want to do past life regression, one of the first things I have to, that's also a presenting issue. But they're presenting the solution to their issue as if, and it can be like saying, I really want a screwdriver. Can you use that on this nail? It's like, well, no, you can use a hammer for that, and that may be hypnotherapy. But it's so then you have to really understand what the issue is, but also who the person is and what modality fits them. And it's not for everybody. But if somebody says, I feel very karmically connected to past life regression, I don't know why, but I just feel strongly drawn to it. I've got a strong sense that this is going to be the thing that's going to help break through. I've done hypnotherapy or CBT or psychological counseling, and that's got me a good portion of the way. But I feel that there's something else, and I want to take that extra step. And so, yeah, so that's part of it.
Exactly. And it's so funny because that's exactly the conversation I have when people say, well, I really want to do past life regression. And my question always is why?
Mm.
And, what is it that you think that that's going to give you? Um, it's not, a tour bus that you board. You have to have a reason for it. And I do find that in most cases, dealing with this lifetime is quite enough to unravel things. But I think that there is something very special also about regressions in that are life between life, and I love doing those as well. So, from your perspective, what is the benefit of going into that life between life period?
Yeah, well, I love the it's not a tour bus, and I'm the same thing. So I say exactly the same thing. Well, people come to you and they want to be a tourist, and they want to know, I want to know who I was. And I say, well, who cares? You're just another person who was born into aging, sickness, and death. You suffered sometimes, you had goods and bads. So what? And you lived in a certain country, but what does that mean? And so that's kind of where the between lives come in to a degree, which is in past life regression, it's not just, who was I, what country did I live in, what events happened, what were the narratives? It's how does that affect me in this moment, in the now? And so I don't try to regress back to who I were. It's a core. The root cause is generally connected to an emotion, like a key strong emotion, like a fear that empowers a limiting belief. And so you say, go back to the first time you felt this way, and at that point, I don't really care if it's in this life or a past life, but I won't. And so for people who don't do past life regression, they do care. They'll discriminate and say, go back to the root cause, but only in this life. And so it's not that I'm saying, do past lives, they're amazing, hypnotherapy isn't as good. The exact opposite. I'm just saying, let's not limit ourselves. Let's allow the subconscious to go where it wants to go. And this will happen spontaneously. People who have no interest or belief, so I talked before about people should have karmic connection to past lives, but they may not have a conscious connection to it. So there are people who come to you and don't ask for past life regression, but end up in it anyway. They don't believe in it, but they come to start to understand it and have to process it as they go along. Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes complete sense. The spontaneous past life regressions, I've had a number of those, and my clients are often very surprised, to say the least, at
Mm.
what is coming out. So, yes, it is very important. But again, it's possible because we're you and I open to the idea, and when it happens, we recognize it.
Absolutely. And because of that, the client's superconscious mind knows that we're open to it. And not just open to it, but capable of doing something with it. So some hypnotherapists can say, I've done it, 10,000 times in the last 20 years. I've never seen one of these things. What are you talking about? This is nonsense. I know it's nonsense because it never happens. But because you think it's nonsense, it doesn't happen. If you were open to it, it could happen. And then that would be the universe saying, you have enough of a connection with this modality to go into it. Therefore, I'm going to start sending you clients who do this, and they're going to start teaching you. And that's what happened with Dr. Brian Weiss. And he was invested in a psychiatric tradition with a lot of stakes and reasons not to go, get into it, but he was drawn into it. And so that's the same. Michael Newton pioneered between lives in a lot of ways. Of course, it existed, and a lot of people did it before him, but he's certainly codified it in a way which has been very useful for the community. And so it's good that we give him that credit. But so for me, that is something that I find that also can happen spontaneously while you're trying to do past life regression. You end up spontaneously in between lives, whether you want to or not, whether you're following a between lives process or not. But that comes up as well. And that is actually something where, and you can do it in past life regression itself as well, particularly getting into life reviews, meeting with their spirit guide and higher self, and really understanding, what is this life telling us? And it's going beyond that, who was I, what happened, into what does this mean? And what does this mean for me now? So I think that's one important distinction. I think people think of past lives as tourism, but also think of it as, something which is in the past, understandably, we give it that name. But for me, it is really, well, actually a big part of it as well. If we were to change the name, we can call it past life regression, but a huge part of it is past death regression. Because if you said, I've been to a past life, but you haven't been to a past death, well, you've only done half of the modality at best. To me, that's the most important thing. Reliving a death experience, going through all of not all deaths are significant, but a lot of them are significant and are a part of a root cause, or certainly part of a way for us to understand. And that's sort of one of the key benefits as well. We talk about fear. One of the primary fears we have is fear of death. And so this is where people who have near-death experiences report a lot of benefits by going through a death experience and realizing there's something that transcends death, which is this death of the physical body, but not death of the eternal soul, so to speak. And so that's something that's really useful for people to experience, and that helps them transcend fears of that death. Once you transcend that fear, you transcend a lot of other fears as well. So in my book, I've got a case study of a guy whose presenting issue was, I've got a phobia of bees. And those bees were literally attacking him in his, tropical garden in the now. But it gave him this feeling that he was being bullied by the bees, which actually stirred up a lot of stuff, which made him remember he was viciously bullied as a child. And we remembered that he was getting shot by pea shooters in the back of the neck, which is kind of like a bee sting. And so it was bringing up all this past hurt that he had from this life. But then we went deeper and found out that he'd been attacked in a past life, and he'd actually got his revenge and killed somebody. And so he had to learn all these lessons about how to not try and get revenge, how to deal with his fear, but also how to deal with his anger. And so, and then a lot of people internalize this. We sort of want to kill other people or turn that on ourselves into a depression, which really limits us. So this is the kind of thing as well, which is we try and repress or not face some of these things, but we have a lot of emotions bubbling on the surface that are below the surface that we don't deal with, and it's useful to sort of bring them up. And I mean, that also got to another level where there's past lives between lives is really going into multi-dimensional beings, or beings that are, in our past lives, we're still going back into another physical body. But in between lives, we're really emphasizing the fact that there's a council of elders who exist as spiritual beings that don't need bodies. We've got our spirit guide who probably doesn't incarnate anymore, but used to. And then you can start finding, I have, again, spontaneously, people will start saying, oh, I've got an earthbound spirit. Well, there's a dark spirit here. And ETs have become something which has come into the popular consciousness more and more these days. Dolores Cannon spoke a lot about them, but it's becoming more sort of experience. So that's something that I've seen in my clients as well. And he had this feeling as well of sort of being preyed upon or bullied by ETs. He had dreams of alien abductions and device implants, these kind of things. So, where it can go to. And again, this is at some point we may stretch our credulity, about whether, we believe any of this or not. But it does just come down to the experiences that people have in hypnotic states and the way we can apply therapeutic resolutions, whether we believe in them literally or metaphorically. It's all the kind of stuff that can come up. So that is something that in my book, I talk about this life regression, hypnotherapy, but also past lives, and then going into some of these spiritual areas as well, which I think is becoming more important, in these years. Brian Weiss was writing 20, 30 years ago, and I think there's sort of just this extra step, which is useful to come up now as our consciousness develops.
Indeed, absolutely. In your book, you also talk about karmic links between therapist and client. And I think there is something here that is very interesting, because it is definitely the case that when the connection is made, it does help the therapeutic process. And we know that the relationship between therapist and client, doctor and patient, it doesn't matter what the healing modality is, the relationship plays a very important determining factor in what happens next. So tell us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. There are two things that I think rapport is certainly important. And so, doctor and client can have that. And for me, there's sort of another level of karmic connection, which is, in a sense, it's sort of a transcendent level of rapport, which is, and I see this more so when I'm training people. So I train people often in their first year or two of practice, that sometimes they'll already have a hypnotherapy qualification or they've had years as healers. But then it's when they start attracting people who want to do past life regression. So it's that thing, do you have a karmic connection? Do you really need to do this modality? And why with me? And so that's something I also see as well. Some people can be quite good at marketing, but there's sort of the universe sends you the right people. Like I said as well, and if you don't want to do past life regression, well, then that you won't see anybody. But if you're interested in it, then you will get sent people, and you're being sent people by the universal intelligence, I think. But you're also being sent people that you're connected to, but also that have a message for you. And so, I see this particularly in the first two or 3 years of people's practice. Now, I've been doing it for 20 years. It happens less, although I had someone recently. But my point is that the clients that you have will be there to work on their own issues, but they'll be reflecting back to you some issue or some learning that you need to learn yourself as a healer. So you can have that feeling that I'm here helping them, and they're getting messages that are for them, and I'm a conduit and a facilitator that guides them towards these healing messages for them. But it's sort of healing or illustrative or has insights that are useful for me. And so that's one way that karmic connection can happen. And, you can have that feeling that we've certainly, maybe we've had past lives together, we've certainly been in the same tribe. So in this life, the meditation experience I was talking about at the beginning happened to be, I sat in Tibetan Buddhist meditation retreats, 10-day retreats, or Vipassana 10-day retreats. And the minute I just sat down in them, I just thought, this is incredible. They're vocalizing some of the wisdom that I've been trying to put into words, or sort of thinking something's wrong with that. It should be this. But then they said all of what I was, grasping for. They just had it perfectly formed. I just wept at the beauty and articulateness of what they'd put into words. But other people on the retreat would sit there and go, this is gobbledygook, I don't get it, And so that's where karmic connection comes as well. You can say the same thing to two people. One person sees it as beautiful art, and the other people sees it as, some whatever. So that's part of that karmic connection as well. So you're able to resonate with your clients at a certain level, and you're able to not just give, but also get back.
So this is very interesting, because it's a reminder that there are energies at work here, and that there is this mirroring that goes on between us and everything and everyone around us. Um, Synchronicity, I think, is a good word to describe this. Do you have you come across? I guess it would be difficult to tell, but do you ever, when you're sitting with someone, irrespective of whether they are doing a past life regression or whether it's just a normal bog standard hypnotherapy work that they're doing with you, do you ever feel like there is a karmic link between you, that you've known each other before, that this is a role that's playing out between you?
Yeah, I actually haven't had that many times of, specifically, oh, there you are in a past life. I have had a couple where they in their past life regression, they're like, oh, there's a person there. I can see them coming towards me. They are 60, they've got a beard. I'm looking at their eyes. Oh, it's you, And so that's like, but out of 5,000 times, that's probably been two or three times. And well, probably a little bit more than that, but also not necessarily highly specific. Although when I think about some of my clients' case studies, they've had times where they found they've been like really enmeshed, because sometimes they'll be working with friends, families, or colleagues, and they have some sort of connection already. And so, yeah, absolutely, there can be that connection. But as you say, like there is a synchronicity, but there's also a web of connection. And so this is something that often gets revealed in the between lives as well. We've got a soul group, and a soul group can be a core of 10, 12 people. Then it could be another circle of 100 people. There can be another circle of 5,000 people. And then there can be, we live in an Anglophone sphere in which we don't know much about the world, in where people are speaking other languages, where we're connected in that way, in that sense. Or we have, other sort of types of connections that the people who are watching this podcast are one group, and we're quite different and have different beliefs and values to other groups still on this planet, for various reasons. So I think there are a lot of subgroups in this world that are, and a lot of us are connected. Absolutely. And of course, we're all connected in one way or another. And sometimes there are people we're connected to because we feel a sameness with. Then there are people we appear to be disconnected from or different from, but we're actually, in some strange way, even more connected to them because they're there to trigger us and poke us by the difference and see how we react. And so I think ultimately we come to this transcendent sense of connection to absolutely every molecule in the universe.
Listening to you there, I was just remembering one of the case studies that Michael Newton talked about, and it was a life between life case, and they had got to the point where they were planning what was happening in the next life, and there were different souls kind of volunteering to play different parts. And when he realized who was about to play mother, there was a groan. Oh no, not you again. And it just
Yeah.
that stuck in my mind. But again, what that's illustrating is the importance of knowing how every experience is important, and how everyone, whether they are, from our perspective, friend or foe, is part of our development.
Well, friend or foe is a label that we give people in time.
Exactly.
So and it's funny you mention that, because I have 7 case studies in the book. One of them specifically focuses on the between lives, and that is one where a daughter with her mother. And so, and the mother was absolutely an enemy in previous lives, played the role of an enemy, I should say. And as a mother, they loved each other. She loved her mother, but was also surprised at how her mother appeared to just be cruel to her. And so she had been a lover and a husband in a past life, but had literally killed her. And she had been a beautiful woman, but kind of maybe used that beauty as a sort of a shortcut or just something that prevented her. She reveled in her beauty rather than going deeper into spiritual things. And she attracted things from her beauty. So, but beauty can attract a lot of ugly things. And so you get that paradox, and that those two dualities come and hit each other. And so, or like, when you choose it, you can choose the mother. Oh no, why this one? And you can choose a body. Oh, I want that beautiful one. Well, a beautiful body doesn't always give you beautiful experiences. In fact, it can attract exactly the opposite. And so this is something also that's implicit in a lot of the therapy we do. And so healing some of the wounds that came from that unwanted attention was a big part of it. But we found in a past life that she had been kicked to death, basically, and killed by her. But as she lay dying, she realized that was part of the rude awakening that kicked me away from the physical body into the spiritual. And it's a very strange thing to plan in a way, but for somehow, and this is where you get to a peace that passes understanding, because I don't have to pretend to understand how that works, and you can, from a conscious analytical thing, pick holes in it. But for some reason, this is kind of a pattern that we see. We can have whispered wisdom, but if we don't listen to it, the universe may shout at us one way or another. And either way, as long as we're getting truth, and truth isn't always what we want to hear, but what I do find is that, and so this is also not something that I would tell people. So it does sound kind of like brutal truths, but I'm not there telling people in hypnotic state, that this seems really bad, but it's actually good. It's the exact opposite. I'm just gathering the narrative, and then they're telling me that I understand that I'm at peace with this and it's okay, even though it's terrible. And so that's a useful thing, because it's easy enough to be peaceful and with, when things are going our way, when we get what we want. But part of the challenge of compassion and forgiveness and equanimity will come under challenging experiences, which this earth is pretty good at providing us with, and so we have a karmic connection to being on this planet. And so, and all that involved. So that's something that's kind of one of these messages is, understand that and embrace it and use it and see it as a beautiful opportunity in a way. And that's something that people tell me at the end of therapy sessions. It's too much to tell somebody we're all one, we're all connected, there is no suffering. You can't do that. That's why we're healers, because otherwise we'd be meditation teachers, But we're healers because we understand you have to get into the weeds of it and help people get through some of those details.
Indeed. And it's I can remember the first time I ever had a client go to a life where he was stabbed. He died because he was stabbed, and then went into the in-between period and said, there's the guy who stabbed me, and he's coming towards me, and no fear, but actually a kind of joy at being reunited. So there was a sense of, oh yes, we know each other, that we've had positive experiences before, and how surprised he was at making this discovery. So I think that this is an incredibly complex study, in a sense, of what it is to be human, what it is to be a living soul. I did have another question I was going to ask you, and for the moment it has escaped me. But I've got it. So when we're thinking about soul groups, do you find that this can blend with lineage, so that certain soul groups come into certain family lines?
Yeah, people tend to repeat. There are so many combinations that have to happen in order to be reborn to have the same mother again. And I tend, and what I tend to see happening, and particularly the example that I gave, she was giving the example that she had had 7 incarnations connected with her mother. And incidentally, which she also met her in her between lives, and she started off in tears of sadness, and then when she re-met her mother in the between lives, it was tears of joy. And so either way, it's tears, but and there is that resolution, is that realization. And what she said to her, in fact, her soul counsel said to her, "We're glad that you've had this realization in these therapy sessions, because this is your 7th iteration going through this pattern with this person. And if you hadn't woken up to it in this life, you would have gone through another round of 7, starting again, suffering, learning, scratching your way through until and so that ancestral lineage as well. This happened to be when I was living in India, and she had been and so they had been Indian a number of lifetimes, but also European as well. So they can jump back through. So to come back to that, like the ancestral lineage link, there can be a connection to sort of genetics and biological family, or certainly sort of staying within a similar group, but they can easily flip out of that at sometimes as well. So when you're looking at past lives, there can be so many that can come into play, many of which are not relevant, but some of which are. So they definitely can be a lineal connection in terms of physical stuff, but you can easily flip out and do the opposite as well, is what I see.
Yes, I agree. But I often play with this idea when I think about how certain groups, let's say of artists, um, you know, that certain eras are dominated by a particular group of artists. And I've often wondered whether perhaps this group of artists is the same group of artists from previous ages, etc. That's an idea that I've played with. I haven't come to a solid conclusion on this, but I do wonder. So, but you're finding what I feel too.
Well, I do think about artists quite a bit. For some reason, about 10% of my brain is always thinking about the Beatles and John Lennon. I don't know why. Just kind of, and so I find that just kind of an incredible phenomenon that those 4 guys came together and had a connection and a magic that transformed the world at a very transformative time energetically, coming out of the 50s, and they were born into a tough post-war world, and the chemistry and connection that they had that so many others didn't. And yeah, absolutely. And even just musical ability in itself for the non-musical is kind of miraculous. I think that's part of a reason we put them on a pedestal, to have that kind of creativity. When you look into the kind of creativity as well, there is also this aspect of tapping into a universal consciousness, and these ideas that creative ideas and songs are out there, and there are various people tapping into them, and it's sort of a bit of a sort of a contest to be who can be the most open and hardworking and quickest to get it down before the other person does. And so there's that little competitive part in it, but there's also a deep connection to. And it's something that then must resonate with the collective consciousness. So these songs come out, and they just become things that millions of people would take to their hearts and remember for decades. And there's some sort of magic there that transcends an understanding, and is speaking another language as well. It's sort of, and so when we're doing hypnotherapy, there are these stories and narratives, but they're really, to me, speaking the language of the subconscious, which is, it's a way of artistically, poetically conveying meanings and metaphors that go beyond basic narratives. Who was I? What's the character? But it's really, what is this telling us, about life and the meaning of it? And so all you need is love with a nice melody is something that just cuts to the heart of it, and makes people feel good and makes people feel connected to something beyond them. I think Mozart and the Magic Flute, there's something divine or beyond, transcendent in music and artistry. And it does make you wonder, how can a 5-year-old pop out and what is a genius? How's a musical? How can they do that? Salieri worked as hard and was pretty good, but he just wasn't Mozart. There are a lot of, the Who were quite good, but, the Beatles were just had much more of an impact. And, it's just sort of, I love all these little mysteries.
I want to take you back to what you said about meeting entities. So tell us more about that.
Yeah. So for me, there are entities can start as like in between lives. We are thinking about a soul council, your soul group, and your spirit guide. So that's the first set of entities that I thought about, and we consider these kind of light and helpful. If you think about it, your soul group can reincarnate and go from one body to another and connect with you and have a karmic connection to you. And some of these people may be your clients or your therapists. Uh, and so this is actually something that I found, I mentioned at the beginning that I sat and meditated and remembered my own past lives and my own past in this life as a 10-year-old. After about a year of but after that, I spent kind of the next year meditating pretty much full time, doing a lot of 10-day meditation retreats. And I had a girlfriend who'd been on this path, solidly living in India with the guru for 5 years. So she was very committed to this path. Her father happened to be a psychiatrist, but she was very into the spiritual way. And we're both about 26 at this time. And so I'd come from an office environment, and she'd just been in the ashram. And then one night, as we were meditating, or just before we were going to go to sleep, I think she was meditating and I was reading a book, and I said, "Shall we switch the lights off?" And next thing she says, I'm Celeste. Maya is not here, and I'm her higher self. And so she went into a spontaneous trance before I knew what trance or hypnosis was. She started speaking to me an entity, as in her higher self, which is distinct to her conscious self. And that began a conversation where they said, our spirit guides have guided us to be together and to have this moment. It's because you both need this on your path of awakening. You have this karmic connection. Mark has been getting downloads and meditation, but he remains skeptical, or he's been getting the message, but he's been discounting it. If he gets the message through the mind of another person rather than his own mind, he won't think he's hearing voices or whatever. And so that's something that got my attention, and it spontaneously and I would then interview her and say, "What are you talking about? Who is this? What's going on?" And so I then spontaneously got put into the position, before I knew what it was, of a regression therapist asking questions to somebody in a hypnotic state that I hadn't induced, but they'd gone into spontaneously. And so the next morning, we talked for an hour about many things, about enlightenment and healing and entities and energies, spirit guides, etc. And past lives. And all of it was, I was aware of reincarnation through studying Buddhism, but I wasn't really aware of past lives as like a practical thing. But then the next day, she didn't remember anything that had transpired. And my head was spinning, thinking, what just happened? So this happened to be in Pokhara in Nepal. And I walked out into the town, went to look for a Reiki teacher or a healer or a library or something. And I found a little bookshop and just picked up this book called Many Lives, Many Masters by Brian Weiss, and then flipped through. And he said, I was just sitting there just trying to, talk. And then she went into a spontaneous past life regression, started saying this and that. I was like, well, great. So this has happened in the past. I'm not in another dimension. I'm quite possibly still sane, and this all seems very familiar. And that helped me made that link from, is reincarnation the thing or not? Is the Dalai Lama telling the truth? To, it's a therapeutic thing that can happen in real life, or, it's not just for the enlightened masters or something. It's something that, and so that was sort of the universe pointing me to find that book. But it's one thing to pick up a book and have an intellectual curiosity. It's another thing to have a burning need to understand what has happened as a personal felt experience to me. And so I think that's the kind of thing that, they've been saying in your between lives, you guys agreed to have this meeting to help Mark wake up from his economics training and to realize that he can go and, do a proper profession like healing.
To me, it never ceases to amaze me what what happens in these sessions, and I can recall at least two occasions recently where surprising things have happened. Like in one instance where I was guiding somebody into a life between lives. Actually, no, I was guiding somebody into a past life regression, and instead we ended up in a kind of between life state where they met one of their spirit guides, who then gave them a beautiful account of where they were so far on the journey this time
Mm.
round, which is a very profound and healing experience. You just don't know what is going to happen with each regression, um, including mediumistic experiences where suddenly they are with somebody who they have lost, and who is a member of their family who they love, and tremendous healing happens, including I have had it where physical symptoms have disappeared, physical pain has disappeared after that. So it's certainly, I'm sure you feel this too, experiences that leave us in awe, and which I always feel very honored to somehow be a part of. Um, and I'm sure that you feel that too.
Yeah, I spent the first couple of years of my practice just in awe and amazed that two human beings could share this transcendent experience together and uncover these incredible things. And yeah, that the experience that I had as a 25-year-old was, awe-inspiring, and just turned my world upside down so much that I had to. I was on a good path conventionally anyway, but it turned things upside down. But one of the next things that actually happened with that, so I found the book the next day, but then we'll continue to have these conversations over the next 2 or 3 weeks. But what happened was we transitioned from some of the good, wise, powerful, beautiful beings to some other energies that started to seem a little conflicted, to then started to get a little bit suspicious and a little bit dark. And so it's not all rainbows and light, and the dark night of the soul on our own spiritual journey we can certainly have, and that can express itself in a number of ways. So one thing that I found over 20 years of doing this, and many thousands of sessions with clients, is that, and I talk about this in the second half of the book, is that people can find things like you can have meet mediumistically loved ones, or you could also think of as soul group members, but you can also find earthbound spirit attachments that may be known to the person and maybe not. And sometimes they may have positive intentions, but oftentimes they don't have positive effects. And that's something that, again, people can be very surprised by, and a lot of therapists are surprised by it. And so the people that will come to me, because I know I'm karmically connected too, and drawn to do this work, and that's part of my reason for being in this life. But a lot of people aren't, but then they'll refer them to me, or they'll take some of my courses and realize, well, I can do the basics on how to help release somebody to the light. But if it's a serious, complex case, then maybe I need them refer them to Mark. But at least they know what it is, and they're not afraid, or they're not very confused as I was the first time I encountered it, or very conflicted. Like, it's so beautiful to have all these wonderful experiences, but then there can be a dark side to it. And how do you process that? And so, yes, there can be a dark side, but if you really know what you're doing and you take it to the next degree, and that will often involve, significant training or life experience, you get through to the point where, yes, there is dark in the world, but there's night and day in the world. But the ultimate reality is there's no night and day on the sun. There's
Yeah.
only light,
Yeah.
And so, but again, easy to say that to somebody who's got problems at a spiritual dimension level. And so that's not the answer. The answer is engaging with that darkness, helping them get through to the dawn. Because we're in time. Older, we appear to be anyway.
When you have come across these attachments, Are they people who are linked? Are they entities that are linked to the person from this lifetime, from another lifetime, or random?
All of the above.
Yeah.
And and then random from an ultimate perspective, maybe nothing's random. And in the end, they feel that random is I don't know who they are. They have no connection to me in this life. But and they may have even been like really like preventing them from sleeping, giving them nightmares. We've got one example in the book of a case study where she wasn't able to sleep. She was anxious and unable to perform at work, and her life was really being shut down by these things. She'd had psychiatric treatment and medication, but that had made things worse, not better. And in consultation with a psychiatrist, she ended up looking at other ways, and we found there were attachments there unknown to her. Some were unknown to her, and they did have a connection to a past life as well. So this is one thing as well. People who do spirit releasement, I think that's something that's more known. There are two ways of doing it. One is a simple level, which is you find people might be listening to this and thinking, "Oh, I found an earthbound spirit, and I just said go into the light." Or I found a dark spirit, and I said bring in Archangel Michael and get him to go, and then that was great. But then they'll find out. But then I told them that, but then the client reported there were still some problems. They said I'd cured it, but 2 weeks later I hadn't, or they were good for 2 weeks, a couple of months, and then it came back. Or they'll be saying that to an entity, and it'll work, 8 out of 10 times, and then 2 out of 10 the entity says, "No, I'm not going," and then they don't know what to do next. And so that can be because what you end up having to do is not a simple thing for 5 minutes saying go into the light or let go. It's a complex thing where you end up doing hypnotherapy on the entity. And that hypnotherapy may lead you into its past lives to resolve its issues that are the root cause for it attaching to your randomly to your client. So you end up having to heal the entity. So you have compassion and love and inquisitiveness and curiosity about the entity, helping heal that. And that's the way you get it to release, not by just telling it to release or casting it away or being afraid of it or being judgmental towards it. So that is another level. So there's a simple level of spirit releasement that spiritual healers can do. But this is where the complex ones are where our hypnotherapy and past life skills really come in. Because if it's a random that is just sort of just trying to grab some energy or do what it's told, and you can tell it something else, and then you can get rid of them quite easily. But to practice what I practice fully and what I illustrate in the book, that you have to bring on all of your other skills as well, which makes it kind of really fascinating. And that actually becomes something where they think, this was like a bad thing where I got these dark energies, not the light ones that I liked, but because I had them, I know so much more about the spiritual landscape. And I've been able to practice compassion and patience and curiosity, and I've grown and in my spiritual understanding. And it was a bad experience, and I really suffered for a couple of years there, or 6 months, whatever it was. But I end up coming out of it a lot wiser. So it was all for the best.
Well, thank you for sharing your extraordinary experiences in your book and for giving us the time to talk about them today. Thank you so much, Mark.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And I am going to put a link to the book in the description box. But if people want to find you, how do they do that?
They can go to my website, Past Life Awakening Institute, my YouTube channel, Past Life Awakening Institute, and I've got an Instagram. Yeah, so that's it. And yeah, and the book's on Amazon. They can go to my website. I've got a book tab, and they can get it hard copy, various places around the world as well.
Wonderful. I'll be putting a link to your website in the description box and any social media so that people can easily find you.
Fantastic.
Thank you. And thank you all for watching. Next time, we're going to be talking some more about hypnotherapy. But just a little reminder, do check the description box for the information about Mark's work. And also you will find the links to my own websites and my Substack. Until next time, goodbye.